The second round is set. The Phoenix Suns know their opponent, and we have a rematch of the 2021 second round. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we're breaking down Suns Nuggets. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to get your day started here on this Thursday, Friday, whenever you are listening. Get preview coverage of Suns Nuggets. We're going to be here every single day, so hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment down below with your prediction for this series. We'll have a bonus episode Saturday, so get locked onto your favorite team throughout this whole second round. Become an everydayer. Listen every single Monday through Friday, plus those bonus episodes. Aaron Edwards is here, as he is every week, to close out the week. We have a little bit of a lull, but not a long enough one, Aaron, for me. We had a week to preview Suns Clippers, which I had very few thoughts about because neither team played its best players or had their best players. Now I have a lot of thoughts on this series. We only have like 2 days to talk about it, but that is what it is. The NBA playoffs have been good, so I'm not complaining. The draft is today, so I feel like I'm bringing you back down to NBA world a little bit as you, like all these Arizona fans who are probably listening, get amped up for the draft tonight. But let me start with this. I feel like we can't just ignore, or even if it feels repetitive, we have to start with Devin Booker in this series. I feel like this is going to be another dominant opportunity for him. He was maybe the best player. Jimmy Butler has given him a little bit of a run for his money here this week, while Book hasn't even been playing. But Book has been dominant on both ends of the floor, and I don't think that's going to stop against Denver.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to not get any space anymore. Like, the space is always going to be there. He's going to keep getting it. And Lou even said, like, he threw everything at him, and Book just didn't see those guys. Like, they were throwing doubles, and he didn't really care. And I just think Denver or the Clippers have just better defenders. Like, they get physical. I think that was a really nice series to have first. And I've said that the last couple of years. I mean, even though last year we had a shaky one, I just think like getting a really physical team first kind of helps you in the long run. And I think just Book doing that to a team that physical is just going to help for later on with weaker teams.
My first impressions we always kind of knew this was where it was headed. The Suns just kind of had to take care of business. But once I really started thinking about Denver, the two things were, one, they're, like you just said, they're not going to be as athletic or physical or long defensively. They're not going to take up space the same way that basically everyone on the Clippers does. Even somehow it felt like Mason Plumlee was making a big impact, which to me is like Ty Lue just working magic and finding advantages and all that stuff. I thought, okay, Denver's not going to be able to do that. I also thought Denver was going to allow the Suns bench to be a little bit more impactful. I'm not so sure on that. We'll get to that part. But as far as the defense goes, I mean, one good thing that will carry over in terms of kind of getting to rep stuff that we've already seen work for this team is the Nuggets are going to play defense in the pick and roll stuff kind of the same way that the Clippers did. Nikola Jokic is going to be either kind of at the level of the screen, trying to get the ball out of Book's hands, and that drop pass to Ayton will be there, or they'll be dropping Jokic down, which is what Zubats did a lot. And obviously we know the Suns, any of the guys who handle the ball for the Suns are capable of getting a pull-up jumper off of that. Zach Lowe wrote a big thing about how they've kind of been messing with different stuff, but basically that's their two main packages, and the Suns have answers for a lot of that stuff. And like, I just kind of look at it, and Booker showed us, like, I remember last year coming off that Dallas series with the blitzes, I was in a panic of if his handle was good enough at the very highest levels. I feel like he's shown us that he is, especially when there is more space. It is good enough. And he's either going to be able to, like, I don't worry at all about making a pull-up mid-range jumper, and when he wants to, we know he can also make pull-up threes. So I'm not really sure. KCP doesn't freak me out. Maybe Bruce Brown, I think Christian Brown, those guys might be able to body Book in a way that makes him uncomfortable, but I just look and I don't feel like the Nuggets have an answer really to even limit Booker outside of just getting the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, and I think they just have to commit to it. I think the Clippers, they played strong and like really physical defense, but whenever it came to doubling Book, they never actually committed. It was kind of just like, should we not? And they were giving him a lot of space to be able to see the floor still. But that's because KD's out there. So yeah, you want to blitz him, you want to double him, but KD's extra pass away wide open if he does find it. So I think that if the Nuggets want to commit to like doubling Book, they're going to have to really blitz him and do it for real, because the Clippers weren't exactly doing it. They weren't confidently doing it anyway.
Yeah, they weren't. They were kind of relying on, we're going to shut down Durant. We're not going to let him to even really get the ball, let alone get a comfortable shot off. And, you know, if that means we live with Booker getting to the basket, getting into his mid-range, even facing a worse defender. Like, there were times when they would switch stuff or, you know, rotate around, and they didn't even treat it as a panic if Gordon or Batum or someone ended up on Book. It was like, let's keep the other stuff away, which we've seen. Like, the Bucks kind of did that in the finals 2 years ago. I think the big difference is Book's just better. Like, he can make more shots off of that. He's going to find his teammates better. He's looking for his teammates. I talked a lot on the recap show of the clinching game the other night that the word Chris used was creativity. Like, that's kind of the development that he's seen from Book, is just even having kind of like the cockiness or imagination or whatever to try some of the stuff he's trying. I don't think he would have done that when Chris first got here, coming off the bubble and everything. But let's also really quickly just talk through the differences from 2021, because I think that's part of what we're talking about already with Book. But to me, the biggest difference here, Aaron, is I feel like that series was a Chris Paul series and kind of a ball movement series, and the Suns just using their base level stuff to just break the Nuggets. The Nuggets just didn't have the personnel, the size, the whatever to do anything. But if you look back at that series, Book was shooting less than 50% from the field, low assists, low free throws most of that series. He was good, but definitely was not at his best. It was Chris Paul against Nikola Jokic's defense, and then moving the ball to attack guys like Michael Porter Jr., who were trying to be helpers, or Aaron Gordon, who was trying to be a helper, and they just kind of ran out of answers. And then we know, Suns in 4 and Jokic getting ejected and all that stuff. It became really frustrating for them, but it was not Booker carving them apart. That's going to be different, because obviously we know the recipe for the Suns is not going to be put the ball in Chris Paul's hands and let him go to work in this series.
Yeah, I really want us to get into, I'm just going to keep harping back to it, like the physicality. Like, I don't think they have that part, but I want us to get into the other ball handler thing from the start. Like, I know you got to get CP3 his touches, and he's going to try to get 8 his touches early, and we're going to do the CP3 offense for a little bit. But I want to get to just be on the attack from the start and just see what Denver's willing to do with Book playing point, and with him running the pick and roll with Ayton instead of Chris Paul early, like not waiting till the second quarter or the third quarter to start doing it. I want to see what Malone's move is going to be from the start.
Yeah, Nekias Duncan, who does the Dunker Spot podcast and a whole bunch of stuff, he was doing just initial thoughts after the games on Tuesday when we know the series was finally going to happen, of what kind of matchup stuff and whatever was in his head. And he brought up an interesting idea of if Malone puts, because we think okay, Michael Porter Jr., you can kind of exploit him if he's trying to help. But I think one big difference, just to say off the top, is he's a much better player. He's not going to be embarrassing, falling asleep, not able to make an impact. That was a very much a wake-up call series for him. Yeah. It's not going to be like that anymore. He's not an elite defender, but he's much more aware. And offensively, he's a real threat now, where he can have the ball in his hands at times. He can catch and shoot, and you have to get a contest out there, and he's huge, and that's hard and everything else. But he brought up the idea, when the ball isn't in Chris's hands as the ball handler, to have MPJ on him, and maybe even at times when the ball is in his hands as a ball handler, but especially because if you think back what the Clippers were doing, they were just ignoring him, right? That's why he was getting so many shots. And Nekias was basically like putting it out there on Twitter of like, if he's going to be in the corner just spotting up, turn that against them, have Porter be quote unquote defending him, but then have him as a possibility to come protect the rim or rotate or use his length to just get in the passing lanes, things like that. I thought that was kind of interesting. I think they will have to get creative and really exploit the guys on the Suns who aren't Booker and Durant, similar to what we did see from the Clippers. But I agree, they don't have quite the personnel to do it, obviously. But the other quick thing on that is one similarity with the Clippers yet again, because of Jokic and Zubac's having things in common. They're not athletic. They're not, elite switch guys or anything like that. Is I would guess we might see some Jokic on whoever the fifth guy is, Craig or Okogie. I think a lot of Suns fans felt like that got the Suns out of their rhythm in the first round, but I also feel like it's kind of smart. If you're going to put Nikola Jokic on 6'4" Josh Okogie, it makes sense to kind of use that. But I understand, too, like kind of what you're saying. We just saw for 4 games as the Suns won that series what works. So you don't want to just say, let's attack some weakness just because it's there if you know a Booker ISO is going to get you 2 points a lot of the time. So I don't know what that balance will be. What do you think?
We talked about this in text. I think Okogie is going to start, and he puts a lot more pressure on the rim than Torrey Craig does. Torrey Craig shot the lights out, so like he really did his job for that series and what they asked him to do. And he was a big body, and he tried his best with Kawhi, but it was just Kawhi. I think you kind of just have to go back to our original lineup now, and just you're going to have to just make Jokic work and attack him and put pressure on him. And Craig, he doesn't exactly attack the rim like you want for a center that's like that bad on defense. And I think Okogie, he's willing to put the ball on the floor, and the players, KD, Book, they like when he does it. So I think having another player willing to attack the rim and get to the free throw line and attack Jokic is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's like even if it maybe gets them out of their normal offense to use somebody different than Ayton as a screener, and then it's like, okay, where's Ayton standing? Is he along the baseline in that dunker spot? What is he doing? Is it maybe 2 screens and Ayton and Okogie? So like, it's going to be unnatural for them, but I think you're right, too, not just to try to exploit and be like, okay, we can score on Jokic, but it's also, you can't just let him have an easy time standing in the corner while he's supposed to be defending, right? You got to make him tired. You have to make him think. You have to make him process all that stuff, because he's going to be a machine on offense. If you can make him 5% less of a machine, that's a win. And the way you can do that is to attack him. All right, let's go to how the Suns can guard the Nuggets. To me personally, that's how this series is going to be decided. I think we know a lot of what the Suns are going to be able to do, like we just talked about offensively. I don't know if the Nuggets have some grand plan to shut that down, but it's a big question to me if the Suns can shut down what the Nuggets do either. And so we'll talk about some of the options there next. First, today's show brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. Perfect for a preview show today. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay, guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, coming back here, let's talk about the Suns defending the Nuggets. Again, I think that's going to be the biggest side of the ball in this one. We'll get to the Okogie stuff in a minute. I'll just jump ahead to say I agree with you, Aaron. I think he should play, and I would bet a lot that he will start. I would actually be pretty disappointed if he didn't. I think it's pretty obvious to me, but we'll get to why in a moment. Big picture, though. And this is another area where I think it's different than defending Kawhi, different than a lot of even like playoff matchups where you're trying so hard to say, okay, this is what their offense is. We're going to overplay this and that, and we're going to develop special coverages for this. Maybe we see some of that as the series progresses, but I think from the jump, you kind of just want to play Denver straight up. Just contest, rotate well, and get a rebound when they miss. Like it's very basic, but they don't do anything crazy. It's just Jokic is so big, so smart, and they have these guys who play off of him and can shoot and handle the ball and everything else. It's like, just get in their way, get a good contest, and get the rebound.
Yeah, I mean,
is that too simple? I mean, I feel like that's it.
It's not. No, it's not going to be the same rim pressure that they had to deal with last series. I mean, Powell and Russ, they're attacking, they're trying to bait you on the fouls, and I think we give up a lot of layups in I think game 4, but I think if we just want to do it that way and just play straight up, don't foul, maybe Ayton helps on drives to the basket and tries to get blocks, but just is in the way. I think I'm willing for them to play straight up and just get rebounds and just push it. Like, we have a bunch of dudes that can push it after misses, and I think with Jokic, you just have to watch cutters when he has the ball at the top of the free throw line and stay on the ground. And you're pretty much going to be pretty fine on defense as long as you stay on the ground. Ayton plays him tough. He's strong, and he seems to only want to play strong when he's playing against Jokic. And I think he kind of takes that matchup serious. So I think if Ayton doesn't get in foul trouble and he keeps his feet on the ground, I think we can play them straight up and just run on misses.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it is, because like you watch back, I don't know how many Suns fans were keeping up with Minnesota-Denver. I watched maybe a game or two of that series, and the Wolves just didn't really seem like they knew what they wanted to do. You know, like, it's hard enough when Towns and Gobert are both out there, but, you know, they're playing the Gobert and Murray two-man game where sometimes Gobert is almost like switching. Sometimes he's kind of out on the perimeter and they're burning him that way. Sometimes he's in a drop. It's like, they don't really seem to have a great idea. They're doubling Jokic, which, especially with their lack of size on the back end of that, it's like the ball moves once or twice and a guy's either getting a layup or an open three, because they're just a small team outside of those two big men. The Suns are much more disciplined than that. They have better personnel than that. They have Okogie to be a threat against Murray. They have KD, who will be on that backside. But do you agree with me, like, big picture on that, though, Aaron, that this series is going to come down to kind of just who scores more points?
Yeah, it's just going to be a one-on-one matchup, and we're all going to score. Like, the point, we're not going to lack in scoring. I think both teams are going to score pretty decently. I think I said in our text that both our benches are pretty kind of not great, so I think that's going to be fine. I think it's going to be a lot of starter minutes for both teams, and it's going to be a long series, I think.
I think so too. We'll make our predictions at the end. But to get to Okogie here, so he only guarded Murray on 17 possessions in the regular season. The NBA has that stuff, and that's not a lot, right? I think Jokic was 1 of 3 on his shots. They were all threes. That doesn't tell me anything. That tells me Murray was mostly off the ball and taking spot ups and whatever. It doesn't. And I think that mostly was probably in that Christmas game when Okogie was barely cracking into the rotation. So it means even less to me. But I think he's the guy that you have to be able to fight through screens, because Murray's awesome at rejecting the screen. He's awesome with Jokic. Jokic will flip the screen at the last second. You don't know which way Murray's going. Obviously, when they run like a regular dribble handoff just to get Murray downhill, you cannot get bumped and stopped by Jokic's body on those. You have to be able to get downhill and contest with Murray, stay with him, all that stuff. But I have one thought on the Craig side of it that kind of interests me. I wonder what you think. I don't think this is a game 1 option, but if Craig is out there with the starters, I could see them switching, where Craig maybe could be a guy who you can at least trust late in the clock or here and there for spurts in the post against Jokic, and then Ayton is on Murray, which isn't ideal, but we know Ayton can do that. Does that feel like something that they would try? They really haven't switched much at all, even since getting Durant, even though we all thought they might do that more.
Yeah, I can see us switching up and doing that a lot more often this series. I think you can be pretty fine with Ayton switching, especially with KD kind of switching to a rim protector role when he's out there. So I think you get a lot more stuff you can do on defense switching wise when you have another dude, a 7-footer that can move and kind of help you out on the back end a lot more.
Yeah, I think I think maybe if it's like very clear that Okogie is struggling, or if he's missing his threes and Craig's making his threes, if Craig is out there, it's not great for him to be chasing Murray off screens. I guess Book is another option on that, but that sounds like a bad recipe to tire him out. So, yeah, I mean, I think that just honestly solidifies why Okogie is so important. Is he's kind of the only guy on this team who can do that. That's the reason the minute that KD was traded for and Bridges was gone, that's why we all like zeroed in on Okogie being so important, and it's still why he's important to this team. This is interesting to me. They were really good at not turning the ball over, the Nuggets, in the first round, but they were bottom 10 in turnover percent in the regular season. So they any team that like passes a lot is going to end up that way, even though obviously that's still the best thing for their offense. But I also like Okogie being able to create turnovers, and that's another reason I think you would want him out there. Is if the ball does get moving, he's the most likely guy to get in the lanes. I mean, Book, I guess, too, now, because he was doing a lot of that in the first round. But I think if you can, again, like you were saying, the pace and everything, I think you mentioned, that's another way to do it, is to have Okogie blow some stuff up and just get some cheap, easy points that way.
Yeah, and Minnesota was out their best defensive player, too. So they weren't exactly playing with like the
Rudy
anchor.
Gobert. Shots at Rudy Gobert.
You know what I'm meant. But yes, I think that
I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, he's just catching a stray right now.
Yeah, they didn't have like their wing that gets tips and closes up passing lanes and all that. Like, so I think we're kind of clicking on defense now, and everybody kind of knows their role, even when it's a different lineup. I think Craig knows what he's supposed to do when he's out there. And I think that Okogie definitely knows what he's going to do when he's out there. And I can just see him just leaning on Murray and just kind of just wearing him out. And at the same time, whoever guards him, he's not going to exactly let them off the hook too. And I think for your fifth guy, you kind of need that.
So my final kind of predictions on this is, again, Okogie starting. So him on Murray, 8 on Jokic. That's obvious. I think CP3 will probably be on Caldwell Pope. I feel like Booker ends up on Porter Jr., which isn't ideal, but the reason for that is I think you want Durant on Gordon, because that allows Gordon's the number one, the most likely guy to try to help off of, and again, with Durant being able to be a helper, I think that's what you want to try to do. But I do think like the Nuggets know that. They're not dumb. They know that Gordon's the weakest shooter. They know teams are going to do it that way, so he's a great cutter, like you mentioned with the cutting, and they're going to put him, on the wing or at the top of the key instead of in the corner, because the corner is the easiest place to help from. Okay, again, they know that. So there's not an easy answer. Like I said, that's why I think this side of the ball is going to be the most important. That doesn't even mention, like I said, Book guarding Porter is not ideal. He's like 6 inches taller than Book and is a really big offensive threat these days. And you have to contest. Book, even 6'5" with decent wingspan, like he's not really going to get a hand in Porter's face. If Porter starts cutting, we know Book is susceptible to some of that. So I think that's the best that they can do. I think, being aware of cutting, rotating intelligently, not trying to send too much help at Jokic. He's not going to be a scorer unless he needs to be. We know that. So that's a thing that, Nuggets fans know, but it is sometimes a problem. We saw him in that series 2 years ago start to be more of a scorer, but it still wasn't enough. There's other guys now to make the Suns pay, but I don't think you want to treat. That's why I was saying it's different than Kawhi too, is like with the Clippers, it was like, okay, you can double Kawhi, you can send early, like Ayton come up to stop him on a drive way sooner, because it's like, a dump off to Zubac sucks, but way better than Kawhi getting off. So that's different with Jokic. He's not going to be a guy that's looking for his own shot and you're letting him get those passes off. The pass is the threat with him. So it'll be different. But I think if the Suns can find some answers and score in the 120s and 130s like they have been, that'll give them a pretty good shot. All right, let's talk about some of the smaller stuff. We haven't talked much about Durant. What role is he going to play in this series? Aaron mentioned the benches. We'll get into that in more depth. I'll give you an update on who the Nuggets have been playing, who they're expected to play in case you missed that, and then some of the possession game stuff that's really important for the Suns, as it always has been. We'll get into that next. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by Ibotta. Watching your closet grow after purchasing all of the season's trends, or honestly, if you live in Arizona, it's getting hot and all the stores know that and they're trying to tempt you. Well, you can earn cash back on every shopping trip that you make. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year in real cash back. That can cover the entire cost of a shopping trip. A typical basket of groceries is over $50 more expensive at the end of 2022 than the beginning of the year due to inflation, and you could earn 2.5 times that in cash back from Ibotta. You earn it back either in cash or in gift cards. Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, more. They give you real cash back, not points or loyalty discounts or anything like that. It can go right into your PayPal account or the gift cards, as I mentioned. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and use the code LOCKED when you sign up. That's IBOTTA, Ibotta, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED at sign up. All right, Aaron, we'll make our predictions here in just a second. A few quick things to dive through, look through, sift through here. Let's talk about Kevin Durant. The number one thing that jumps out to me with him is, I know coming off of that Game 5, he went 9 minutes without taking a shot in the fourth quarter while the Clippers were making a run. That was ugly, but let me ask you this off the top before I make my observation. Do you buy into that whole narrative about him generally as a player throughout his career, that he kind of allows himself to get kind of cast off to the side and marginalized during stuff like that? Or do you feel like it's more like the Suns messed up not getting him involved? Which side of that do you fall on?
I think we saw it in game 2. Like, sometimes I think he just gets so caught in the flow of the game that he forgets to be KD sometimes. And with Kyrie, I don't think he allowed it to happen that much, because with Kyrie, you can legit just get lost in it and end up not touching the ball for a while. But in this, Book is open and people aren't leaving him. So it's not exactly like he's falling apart. Like, we were getting good shots while he's not taking over, but I still would rather him have the ball in his hands. And I think I said this last week, it just puts a different kind of pressure on the defense, rather than having Chris Paul just kind of run his stuff when the game's getting tight. It works, I know that, and when Chris Paul is hitting, it looks really good. But I think the pressure that having KD with the ball in his hands in tight situations is just a lot different on what your defensive scheme is. So sometimes I do believe that, though. Like that game 6 and 7 against the Warriors in 2015, I think he kind of just left the game and just let Russ kind of take over. And the last couple of games here in that series with Boston last year, I just think sometimes he does just get lost in games, and sometimes he just has to be like, give me the ball, like he did in game 2 when Chris Paul was kind of just trying to take over. He was like, no, not anymore. No more of this. Give me the rock. And I think sometimes he needs to do that a lot more.
We should have done that sooner. I think that was a conversation that I didn't hit on coming off of Game 5 a ton, because I don't think it's a huge problem. It sounds like you are mostly on that side of it, and I think we're in agreement that they were getting decent enough offense for the most part that it's not that big of a deal. And I think people lost too. Like, Chris Paul hit 2 catch and shoot threes during that stretch when KD didn't score. So that was, again, Book creating for teammates. Obviously, there was a Landry Shamet miss. There was a Landry Shamet missed catch in transition. We all know that happened, so that didn't help either, and that shouldn't have happened. That was a weird spot to put Shamet in. That's the only mention. I'm not going in on Monty for it. They won the game, but that did happen, so that made things worse. But I think the other part of it that maybe people don't necessarily think about is it's really hard when the defense is selling out like that to take away the stars, to have Ayton on the court. And this is not a knock on him. It's just the reality of playing with a center who doesn't shoot. A lot of teams do it. I'm not saying the Suns are unique or Ayton is unique, but that's what happens. If he's going to be on the court and you're not going to involve him, then you're just choosing to clog the floor. You're just saying you're going to let the defender stand there, right? If he's in the dunker spot, or if he's around the free throw line, or they obviously don't post him up, but if another team that has a post up center posts that guy up, you're just making the defense's life easier. So some of those plays where Booker's having to make that cross court pass to Durant, and we're like, why are we making it so hard for Durant to get the ball that Book has to make a superhero pass just for Durant to get a shot off? It's like, well, that's because they're running a screen and roll with Ayton, which then makes the Durant's defender have to help, and Book can make that pass, and that's actually a pretty good way to use Durant, even if it feels super complicated. So that's another part of why I don't hate it. But I think in this series it's going to be different, and the observation I was going to make with KD is, to me, this is a much better series for ISOs for Durant, because the Clippers were like, absolutely not. You are not getting elbow, quickie little Dirk ISO post up. That's not going to happen. We're going to send Zubats on you immediately. We're going to swipe at the ball. We're going to do this and that. And honestly, like, part of the other reason I wasn't that frustrated by KD not having the ball in his hands is it felt like the dude couldn't dribble in that series, because Russ and Terrence Mann and everybody else was disrupting the ball. He was bobbling it. He was, missing catches or whatever. Not every time, but enough where it's like, I can see wanting to get away from that. In this series, as we keep repeating, Denver doesn't have the personnel to do any of that stuff as aggressively and as effectively. So I could see a lot of Durant ISOs when the game slows down, maybe late in games, if they need to get a couple easy buckets when the Nuggets get on a run, whatever it is. I think that's going to be right there for the Suns in a way that it wasn't against the Clippers.
Yeah, I think if Malone is willing to like get weird and like just take away KD's space, like Ty Lue was willing to, and put a smaller dude on him, even like if he wants to like do something weird, like put KCP on KD and just annoy him like Terrence Mann did, and just have Gordon guard Book and just be big and just be annoying and do it that way. I can see that kind of frustrating the Suns a little bit and kind of putting a little bit of heat on like their rotations a little bit. But I don't think KD's just going to allow himself to be in the corner for a series like this, because I don't think Malone is going to do that. And, like his beef with Kerr, like sooner or later, he's going to say something about having to run offense the entire game. Like he likes just being a hooper sometimes. And that was his beef with Kerr. Is like, I'm not running this motion offense the entire game. I'm KD, just get out of the way sometimes. And that's going to come up a couple of times in these playoffs, I think, especially in a tough series like this. He's going to be like, give me the ball. We're not running any of this stuff. Just give me the rock and let me just go against whoever's in front of me.
I think that's a great way to put it. So let's talk about the benches. Harrison Wind, who covers the Nuggets for DNVR, I read his kind of recap of Game 5 in that series, and just looking forward, they basically played the two Browns. They're spelled different. They don't look the same, but those two guys and Jeff Green. I guess that's all three colors, which is also weird. But those are the three guys who are going to be on Denver's bench. They're not playing Ish Smith. They're not playing Zeke Naji, any of those guys that you might have heard of. It's those three. And he said, Harrison Wind said that's what he thinks will be the bench again in this round. So let me hear what you think. But I feel like the Suns are going to stick with Biyombo.
Yeah.
I think they're going to match Ayton's minutes with Jokic. Let me just say that first. He was at 37 minutes per game in round one. He's not one of these superstars who plays 45, because that's hard to do as a big man. So I think Ayton can easily play 37. Even if it needs to be 38, 39, I feel like you just keep Ayton on the court. Monty does some weird stuff sometimes, maybe not, but that would be, at least let me just say, that's what I'm operating under the assumption of. So to me, Biyombo is just when Ayton's off the court, which is like 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 8 minutes at that point. Craig will play, obviously, if he's not starting. And after that, I don't necessarily know, but I would imagine, I think this might be a Landry Shamet series more than a campaign series. And I don't know if Suns fans agree with me or like to hear that. You might be able to get away with...
They definitely don't like
it. You might be able to get away with... I keep thinking TJ Warren makes sense, but clearly that's just, I got to let that go. Terrence Ross is a question. The reason I say all this with Payne and with Ross and with why I think Warren might make sense, why I think Shamet might make sense, those three guys off that Denver bench are big. And Bruce Brown handles the ball. He's not a great shooter. He's not a great creator, but he's good enough. he will power through you to drive to the basket. Christian Brown on some spot ups, he's not a great ball handler because he's a rookie and that's not his role. So maybe you could put Payne on him or Ross on him and you're not super worried, but they're both physical players. Jeff Green's obviously big. He's not a guard, so he's not really going to factor in. That would be maybe what Craig guards, or Durant if he's out there, or Okogie if he's out there, whatever. I know it feels weird to be worried about the Nuggets bench because it's not a strength of their team, but I could see Payne trying to guard Bruce Brown for a few minutes in one of these games and the Nuggets go on a run, and that can be the difference in a game. So I do feel like Payne being small. If you think back in 2021, they were playing like Austin Rivers, Campazzo, like these guys. And that's why Payne could survive. It's going to be different this time. They have a lot better size right now than they did in that series.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, Book or KD is going to be on the floor at all times. So I think we're still going to be fairly to decently big with the bench out there, especially if Monty is just finally willing to go to Warren. I think the size won't be that much of a factor because, yeah, we're going to have Biyombo or Biyombo KD or Biyombo Book, or we could go Biyombo KD, TJ, like Warren. Like, we're always going to have a decent amount of size and physicality out there. So I think Campaign being out there can still kind of hold his own with that much size out there. But yeah, it's going to be tough, especially coming from injury, to have Campaign like bang for like a little bit with dudes that big.
Yeah, and you think obviously too, that's only 3 bench guys. So there's obviously always going to be 2 Nugget starters out there too. That could be Murray, who Payne, I guess you could try that, or Porter Jr., who makes him even bigger, Gordon, who makes him even bigger, KCP, who you maybe could put Payne on him, but he runs 2-man stuff with their bigs often too. Like, they don't have a lot of hiding spots because everybody gets involved, and nobody in this rotation right now is shorter than like 6'4", 6'5". So Payne being not only small but pretty thin and whatnot too. It, like we saw with Luka. Nobody in this series is Luka, but like that's what you worry about, is that he's just going to get knocked over and foul and all that stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. Monty didn't seem too eager to get him back in there in the Clippers series. I don't know if that was an injury thing or what. All right. Last thing on the benches, I feel like this could be a Durant at center series because, again, Jeff Green is basically their backup center. I think Durant in the bench lineups playing the 5 instead of Biyombo could be something we see. Maybe that's how you get to 48 if Ayton doesn't play a ton, like I'm thinking. Pace, the Suns' offensive pace was almost a second faster than Denver's in the first round. I think the Suns should keep running. And then the boards. The Suns had a 30% offensive rebound rate in the first round. The Nuggets were at 27.5. So if I'm the Suns, I keep trying to hit the boards with Okogie, with Craig, with Ayton, even Chris Paul, who got that magic one at the end of game 4, all that stuff they should keep trying to do just to win the possession game and get any advantage that you can. All right, predictions. We did too long of a show, people, to even catch our predictions. Maybe we'll have to post them on Twitter too because people have tuned out by now, but that's all right. What's your prediction? Suns, Nuggets, how many games? What you got?
I think it's going 7, and it could go either way, but of course we're just going to say Suns. I think a game in Denver is going to be tough. A game 7 in Denver is going to be tough, but I think I've been harping on this for years now. Bucket getters, and we have 2 of the best to ever do it. And so I'm always going to side with that part of it. We got them for a reason, and in a game 7, I think bucket getters always win.
Yeah, the way you put it at the very beginning of that is exactly the way that I'm thinking about it. I'm like, realistically, I think it's going to be a long series. I feel like 7 feels right, and I'm not going to sit here and pick the team that everyone listening wants to lose just to be a jerk. So I'm going to go ahead and go Suns in 7 as well. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a fun series, but it's going to be a clash of styles, and so I could see some weird games in here, especially because the Suns tend to play weird games lately. But either way, should be fun. Weird to have. Also, weird is not having the first 2 games at home. That's never happened, so I'm sure a lot of you already have plans for game 1 Saturday, which is cool. People can hang out. Tell me where you're watching. Maybe I'll show up, everybody. But yeah, let's have some fun this series. Let's keep it tame. Let's not have people showing up at Denver's arena going crazy again, as much fun as that was, because then he tried to get rich off all that, and it got annoying, so let's cut that out. And that'll wrap us up. Everydayers, we'll be back tomorrow with a crossover with the Locked On Nuggets guys. We'll do another deep dive into this series with more of their side of things, and then a recap of Game 1 coming Saturday whenever I get home and get it done. All right. Listen to Locked On Sports Today in the meantime. That show's available on all podcast platforms, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.